Lige, it is so good to have you back, man. It feels like you've been on this extended break vacation, and anyway, it's just delightful to have you back. And anyway, so anyway, here we go. We're starting off the new year, or it feels like a new year to me, from a budget perspective, I should say. Really, so that's sort of the orientation. But on Monday night we had committee of the whole. That was your meeting, and it was filled with all kinds of good stuff.
Right. And thanks, Mayor, for having me. And yes, it's been a minute, as my son would say.
There you go.
And we will be starting.
Look at you catching up on that newfangled terminology.
That's right. We will be beginning a new year come July 1.
Right.
So we're working on the budget now. But the committee of the whole, like you mentioned, you've been working on the panhandling ordinance, and what we did is I brought it up in the committee of the whole and just get a consensus to see if the council as a whole was willing to work with that, and they were. Right. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Sure. Well, I'll give you a little Genesis story on that. We here, Carrie and I, have just gotten a tremendous number of calls about panhandling. I mean, it seems to have gotten worse. I feel sorry for folks who find themselves in a situation where that's the option they have to choose.
Right.
However, knocking on windows, sitting in the media, and currently violating current ordinance is still a problem. And but you kind of ignore it, but it just seems to be getting more and more and more aggressive, and I'm getting more and more and more complaints. And heck, I'm even starting to experience it, in a different way than I had before. And so, talked with the manager a little bit about it, and one of our Wednesday meetings. I'm not sure if you were there for that one or not, but it's been a topic on a couple. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to start writing an ordinance, modifying the ordinance. And so I got to give Carrie Cox here credit for all the work she did. She went out and researched Wilson, Charlotte, Raleigh, all towns that, have a panhandling ordinance, and looked at ours and modified it. And we bounced ideas back and forth. And then I took that document and started bouncing around council. Hey, what do you think? I mean, Tom Harris was, kind of going down that same journey. I believe you had too. And so I bounced it over, made a few changes, and made a few, sent it over to Ruben and Andre, and I think everybody touched it at some point. I just said, hey, are there anything in here that we're missing? But we got to do something different. I mean, it's just got to be different. And so I think what we've got is a great ordinance. I know that we have consensus vote on it. The attorney Jeff wanted to go back and really look at it and look at the constitutionality of it. And I believe there probably will be a tweak or two here or there. But on balance, what it calls for is that in order to panhandle in the city of Rocky Mount, you're going to have to go file an application. You're going to have to produce a government issued ID. You're going to have to get your fingerprints made. And you're going to have to basically interview as to whether or not you receive a permit to be able to go forward in panhandling. And that'll look like a background check. It'll look like all kinds of things, like you would any other kind of context. And I think what's important there is that we identify folks who are out there. So, if somebody were to step over the line, at least we'll know who they are. They're a known entity to us. I think in some cases it may be a deterrent for anybody even asking for permissions to do it. And it certainly gives the police, just cause just to ask somebody, say, okay, what's going on? Can I see your permit? Whatever. And it has to be re-upped every, I think it's 30 days, 60 days. Something of that nature. And if we violate the statutes or we violate the ordinance, then of course it can be removed and rejected. So currently what's interesting though, is that we do have an ordinance that prohibits, folks, panhandling in an aggressive manner in any public place, panhandling in a private residential property without carrying written permission, panhandling within 20 feet of the entrance to any financial institution, check cashing business or ATM. In addition, panhandle or an operator or occupant of a motor vehicle for purposes of soliciting funds, panhandling operator and occupant of a motor vehicle on a public street in exchange for blocking, occupying, reserving public parking space. And so we have some things that are in place now, but I think the extra little piece will give us a little bit more enforcement, or at least just cause to be able to go forward and to work on it. So, again, I mean, this has been a huge issue. I've just gotten so many comments about it, and none of them positive, as you would imagine. So I don't know what your experience has been, but I believe that come June 10th, we'll be able to vote on this, the ordinance will change, and perhaps our police will go forward and try to enforce this in a different way.
Right. No, my experience has been similar to yours and the feedback received. And I will say Rocky Mount's no different than any other community that I've been to recently. Right. I mean, you go to Raleigh or anywhere in the Triangle, you see that going on. But I think it's important to remind that we also have, each year we go through the taxi cab.
That's right.
You have to apply to.
You got to get a license for that.
License.
You can't just do it.
And I think very similar backgrounds and so forth involved in that. And then also, if you go door to door in Rocky Mount, technically you're supposed to have a permit to go door to door in Rocky Mount. Right. So I think it's in line with that. And with you, I agree. I certainly feel for folks that might see the need to go out there and have fun, to get to, receive funds that way. But I think it's also important to remember you also have a right to go through life without having to be harassed, so to speak. Now, it's one thing if someone just says, "Hey, help me out," but it's another thing if they're coming to your vehicle or approaching your car or being out in the middle of the road.
You feel pressure, threatened, or any other thing.
So there's I think you need to make that distinction. So, like you said, I think we have consensus, and I think come June 10th, we will certainly have an ordinance in place. And then I also think, along with this and other code enforcement, I think moving forward, we're going to start enforcing some code. I know the manager has shown that he's in favor of doing that, and that's what we need to do to have a city that we can all live in and all live on the same rules and abide by the same rules.
That's right. And let's talk about safety too. I mean, safety both from the guy who's asking for money as well as the occupant of a car. Being in the median or on a busy road is not helpful to anybody in that case. In fact, it's dangerous to a lot of people. Right. So anyway, I mean, it also includes safety, but again, I think it also is important to note that, you can do it. We're not saying you can't do it. And if you need to, that's okay. But we're just saying that we really need you to comply with these particular pieces of parts. And so, I don't know anything else to talk about panhandling other than we are moving on it. We're trying to do different things, and we're trying to be sensitive to constituents who've called in, who've voiced an opinion. And I know that many people probably feel like we've moved too slowly even in this, but it's what I found is that government doesn't move fast.
But I do want to say thank you for taking the lead on that, and I appreciate you and Carrie doing that. So thank you.
Well, I was happy to do it, happy to be part of it, and I think, quite frankly, Carrie deserves a lot of credit for doing a lot of that research because it matters. You just don't just do stuff. Yeah,
and then we also went through the committee of the whole, the budget schedule, and working through that, and then scheduled on the committee of the whole was the third quarter financials about the event center as well as the other city stuff. And I don't know if you want to hit on any of that.
Yeah, I think we should. Because I got to tell you, and you and I have been working on budgets now, it feels like for 3 days, line for line, and going through it. And we can talk about a little bit about what we see might be coming down the pike there. But as it relates to the event center, I'm tickled to death to see that it looks like we're going to be inside of $1 million of potential loss as it relates to the operations for the fiscal year for the event center. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal to get down to those numbers, those levels, particularly when you look at the economic impact. And that's the thing I think you need to talk about, the growth and the economic impact for the area. So just basically put it in perspective, it cost us about $3.3 million to operate the event center, all expenses in. It looks like our total revenues are going to come in somewhere around $2.3 million, and I'm rounding here, so don't. So
I won't hold you to it.
Thank you. I'm working off memory a little bit too, but 900 to $1 million looks like it's going to be the loss on that, which is a lot of money. Nobody goes about the notion of just throwing that out. But what I'm seeing is that we're closing that gap every year. And I got to tell you, I was a guy once upon a time. I was that didn't see that as being something that I felt like we ought to spend public dollars on. And you were on the lead there too. And I think what happened in all that conversation, I think this is important, that some of that opposition created sort of a change in what this ultimately became. I think it was going to start out as a performing arts center, and now has evolved into a sports complex. And I believe that really has been driving a lot of opportunity. I think it is right placed. And we're seeing growth year over year over year, not only in the revenues, but also in the economic impact that it's having in our area. And so I say kudos to that. I'm just excited to see it.
Well, the attendance it's bringing about 100,000 folks to the city
Right.
A year. And then we're having a lot of events. And then based on the economic impact, according to the city, is $9.6 million on economic impact, which is all good stuff. One thing that I'd like to see more of is more of the downtown businesses staying open
Me too.
during the event center. And then, also helping to attract new businesses down there, because that's the whole reason behind the event center, is to work on downtown and work on the neighborhood.
Right.
So, I agree that things are going better than projected, and that's a good thing. You're correct. I was probably one of the lead opponents to it, but the thing that we've got to do now is be the lead and supporters of it, because it also, we need to make sure it's not going to be a burden on the taxpayer.
Hey, we've had the baby. We got to raise the baby now for sure.
That's right. So that was good to have that, and and we just got to make sure it moves forward, and we work on we work on downtown more, because downtown is important, and there are a lot of things going on that are going well. And we've had just recently, I think we're going to grant some money to some folks that are going to develop a couple of buildings downtown. So that's a great thing that's going on. But in addition to that, we started talking about our revenues that are exceeding our forecast just in the general fund, and then ad valorem tax is ahead of the budget, which is good, and that just shows that there's a lot of economic development going on.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit too, because I think that's going to come up in budget discussions over the next month or two or three, and I just think it's important, because it's a place that I've got, I don't say indigestion over, but maybe a concern or two. We have to publish what they call a budget neutral number, which is frankly just a mathematical calculation,
right?
Depending on percentages and but we don't really know what the tax dollars are going to be. I mean, we've all gotten a rate letter, whether you live in Nash County or Edgecombe County, that has changed the tax rate or the valuation for your property.
Right.
And nobody has gone down that I have talked to.
Right.
In fact, I've gone up in some places that I would be ecstatic if I felt like I could sell it for today. I mean, I really would.
I'm with you, Mayor.
Smoking cigars on the show.
I'm with you, Mayor.
I know. So, but the point is this, and so that's going to allow folks to go down on their tax per 100, and that can be good. But everybody has the right to appeal. So we can now calculate what we believe our ad valorem tax is going to be relative to what the new rates have been assigned. What we don't know is, what is that final rate going to look like? I mean, or the final valuation is going to look like. And so that's a little bit troublesome, right? So now you're trying to set a budget. You think you know what your ad valorems are, which is, by the way, is one of the biggest components of our revenue for the city. And that just makes it a little bit challenging. So, when you're throwing out terms like budget neutral, when you're throwing out, and what does that really mean? It's just an arbitrary number relative to some, anyway, we go through it, calculations, and you don't really know what the total valuation is going to be. I think the new values, I think Ken was saying somewhere around $3.9 billion, with a B.
Right.
And so, if you accept that to be the number, then 56 cents is kind of the magic.
Right.
If it really works out to be 3.4 billion, it may very well move to 57 cents or 58 cents. And so we don't know what we don't know. And at some level, we've got to set a budget before June 30th, the end of our fiscal year. And if we don't do a balanced budget, then the state comes and shows exactly what they will do on that. So anyway, we've got a little bit of if out there, a little bit of smoke, and we've got to figure out how to manage through that. And I just want people to understand that it's not as clean cut, and there's a little bit of subjectivity into this whole process.
So the devil's in the details.
It really is.
And I can give a real world example of this. I've got 2 commercial properties, and both of them, according to Nash County, tripled in value from what I previously had. And obviously I had a concern. I had an appraisal, and I was able to contest those, and
Right.
and it has gone down significantly, but it's not. It's still going up to me, but
Right.
from based off what Nash County had appraised them at or projected. So to your point, my particular situation, we're basing, if you take my situation and compound that by all the commercial properties
Right.
and the housing, mine was reduced 20 or 30%, but then again I went up triple.
Right.
So to your point, it's going to be difficult for whether it's Edgecombe or Nash counties, and then the incorporated areas in the counties to set a revenue neutral, if they so choose to go revenue neutral.
Right.
I think there's support within the city council to stay revenue neutral. But the big question is, what is revenue neutral?
That's right. That's right. And we won't really know that number until after the budget's been set.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a guesswork going into it. So, I mean, I can just tell everybody, I would be a proponent at setting it something a little bit north of revenue neutral, giving us the option to be able to reduce it down in subsequent years versus being kind of caught behind the 8 ball and saying, oops, by the way, we need to increase by whatever.
Right. Because it's always easier to go down than up.
Yes.
So,
and we'll be going down regardless. I'm confident of that. We're what, 67 cents per 100 or
685.
69 cents per 100. I mean, that's a big number, and we'll be able to drop below 60. I feel confident, no matter what situation.
And it's also, I think everyone knows this, but it's worth saying. Revenue neutral is not everyone. Half the people are going to have a reduction, so to speak.
That's right.
And the other half are going to have a significant increase or
theoretically.
Yeah. So, it's a good thing to have appreciation in your property values and your buildings, but it's also painful because it's real money. So
no matter what, it's going to go up. So none of us are going to be very happy with that.
Right. But, so we just kind of went through, and everything's good from a budget standpoint. And then the last thing we had on the committee of the whole is we just went through with the city attorney and went through some of our zoning development kind of rules and things we have to look at, because it's come up quite a bit. And I just think it was a good thing for the entire council and for you to get a primer or re-education on what we can and can't do.
Well, and there's a little bit of discussion too on the budget and how do we go about the process of moving forward on it, and we spent whether or not to include it on this particular agenda for this particular night. And I think we decided I know we did. We decided as a whole that we were not going to do it to give us time to really be able to study the document, to understand what it was that we were looking at before we really started having real conversation about it. And I can say this because I've spent the last 2 days, 3 days, feels like an eternity, maybe a lifetime.
Yes.
Going through it line for line for line, and with you, in fact, and others. It feels like a pretty clean budget for the most part. I'm sure that the numbers will shift a little bit, but it feels like it's been pretty healthy. One of the things I want to point out that really stood out to me is there's been a lot of conversation about going up so big on the police, rates and whatnot, and we did. But here's what I didn't realize is that we had an overtime, a very large number. It was like $1.5 million in overtime wages. And when we were able to go up and fill those slots, that dropped down to, almost a statistically insignificant number.
Right.
And so that was a huge savings financially. But more importantly, we were able to retain some police. They seem a lot happier than they did in those days. And it's still going up, but it was not this, it was not this astronomical number. I think the whole department maybe, working off memory, what's proposed is in the 7 to 8% range, maybe slightly north of there, but it's not triple digits or anything.
And you make a good point with the overtime piece. It's not only from the monetary standpoint, but it's also very taxing on the staff, the officers and stuff, and that's a very stressful job. So, I think it's something that was necessary, and you made great points there. So.
Well, you did. And the other thing is, you mentioned that Tom Looney had passed away. He was a former councilman, been with us for 12 years. A fellow I think most of us knew personally, and just a fine man in every regard. So it's tough to see, folks like that, assets like that in our community, leave us. But I'm sure he's in a much happier and a better place.
Right. So thoughts and prayers with his family.
Absolutely.
But he did offer a lot to Rocky Mount. So
There's no question about that. We retired a service firearm, and I thought that was great. I'm looking at apparently a different meeting notes, but regardless. So we went through. So we went through and awarded a duty badge and sidearm to Corporal Thomas Wilder. He's been with us for 30 years. That is outstanding. And I got to tell you, you brought that up in the meeting, and I was so busy trying to move the meeting along because I feel like I'm just like the traffic conductor, and I'm just trying to see who's there. Particularly when we don't have so many chambers, it makes it even more difficult. But so. Eating a little crow, admitting I was wrong, but at the same time, he does need to be, he deserves to be celebrated.
Well, and one reason is Corporal Wilder happens to be the officer, one of the two officers within the chambers that secures us, serves as security and so forth at each one of our meetings. And he was there, and I thought it was appropriate. And, that's the main reason I did point him out, because he was there.
No, that's right. That was the absolutely right thing. I'm just acknowledging my lack of EQ in that particular moment. That's all.
Well, Mayor, I think it's worth noting, I had the opportunity to serve in your stead when you were out a couple meetings ago, and there's a lot that you have to jungle, and it looks easy as you're up there, but when you're having to make sure that you get everything right and you treat everyone with respect and give everyone the same,
which you don't want to a lot of times, I might add.
But with that, it's not as easy as going through the budget. And, I mean, going through the agenda.
Right.
Even though it's there for you, there's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind, and you're not always on your A game. Sometimes you might be on your A- game.
And Lord help you if you're on a B+, because it just is a long night if that be the case.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went through, we had the consent agenda. There were a number of items on there, but mostly buying, selling stuff, chemicals, etc. We had two public hearings that were postponed. And continue to be postponed. One is a rezoning, both of them were rezoning requests, I think, and then a public hearing about feasibility related to an annexation on Old Wilson Road. We annexed that property into the city, but it has not changed the zoning. That's always the thing that people don't understand. Just because we bring it into the city doesn't mean that the zoning's changed. In fact, we have the ability to change the zoning now because it's part of our ETJ in that particular part of the world. So that went through, and then the meeting lasted only an hour, which was almost shocking to me.
Yeah, that's one of the shorter ones we've had in a while, which included public comment.
Yeah.
We were out of there by 8 o'clock.
I almost didn't know what to do with myself.
I had dinner.
Right? That's a novel thing, right? And not 9 o'clock, you just roll straight on into bed.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was all good. I'm excited about where we are going forward. I know we not canceled, but the next meeting was scheduled to be Memorial Day, so we've deferred that. Next meeting will be June 10th. I got a lot of work in front of us. We do have a special meeting called for May 28th, I believe that's right, to go over the budget in a public way, have a public hearing about it, let the full council hear it. We'll probably go over the CIP at that particular moment in time and probably set some items there. So anyway, good stuff. I feel like we're moving in good, positive directions. We are fiscally healthy.
Yes.
Feels good to be there. And it'll be interesting to see how we end up working on some of the housing challenges that we have. It's something that comes up all the time. But I point out to folks, look, our market, we have like 96% occupancy in all the rentals. We have a very few number of houses on the MLS. And one of my favorite stories from when the city manager says, I tell people I looked at 2 houses, and of course the joke is, there were only about 2 houses available in the category that he was looking for. And that's true. So you got to pick one.
Right.
And he did correct himself today. He said, no, there were 3 houses, but one was under construction. So there is a scarcity of housing at all levels.
Right.
And, you had some, we were in a housing meeting a little bit earlier. It has nothing to do with the brief here, but, you were talking about, we need new housing stock. It would be nice if we could get, all kinds of positive, sturdy housing stock in the area.
Right.
And I think that we're working hard on maybe trying to get some of that happen.
Right. Well, one thing we definitely need to attract our young folks coming back from school or wherever to take some of the jobs that are available at the Pfizers and the Cummins of the world and the Honeywells and the small businesses is we need, some nice apartments and condos that would attract them that they have in other areas. And I think that's an opportunity we have in addition to housing for our families and affordable housing. So
I could agree more. And I tell people, because we both have children about the same age, right? I mean, they all went to school together. Most of them did, so overlaid at some level. It's about creating this live, work, play environment. That's what folks in their 20s and 30s are interested in. And we've just got to develop that product.
Right.
And I think we have a great opportunity to do that on the acreage that we just secured at 95 and 64. Mm-hmm. I believe we have an opportunity to do that in several other corridors within the city of Rocky Mount. And so I think it's just a matter of planning it, trying to make it happen. It does look like my kids aren't out to they don't necessarily want to go buy a house. But,
right.
But they don't necessarily want to live in a house either, for that matter. They kind of, condo or apartment or.
Right.
So we just need to have that availability out there. And I think you're right about that. I know you're right about that.
So it's an exciting time, and it's a transition time for Rocky Mount because we do have a lot going for us right now. And I think we all know this. The triangle is pushing east because it's not affordable there.
Right.
Regardless, I think it's your income level.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what defines affordability, right?
Right.
There's a lot in San Francisco that's not affordable to me.
Right. So we have to recognize that, and that's why downtown is important because, and I'm excited about some of the development that is going to go down there. And we all wish it would happen yesterday, but it's
of course
we didn't get where we are overnight, and we're not going to correct it overnight. But I think we're making good strides, and I appreciate the input from everybody, from the council and the public, and we do have a comprehensive plan that that's going to be coming up soon.
Yes,
and I give it to Emily Pinkston. She is really trying to get that to where we get tons of public input and need it, and she will take that seriously when we go and create the plan.
Fantastic. I'll leave on this one thought, and that is we have Memorial Day coming up. I would love for everybody to come out to the Jack Lockery Park. We have a Memorial Day service there every Memorial Day. We have a guest speaker. We always do. This year it'll be retired Colonel Lori Buckout, and I think folks really enjoy hearing from her and what she has to say. And I'm just excited to be able to celebrate our veterans and, more importantly, those who we've lost in the course of protecting our freedom. So I want to leave everybody on that thought, and please invite everybody to come. Thank you so much for coming, Lige.
All right. Thanks, Mayor.